Hi, today we're going to look at comparing and ordering fractions. So this means we're going to put the numbers together in order from either smallest to biggest or biggest to smallest. That's what we mean by ordering. Comparing is just simply telling me which one's greater and which one is less than. So which number is bigger and which one is smaller. Let's look at our first example. Okay, so here we have two fractions. A fraction is part of a whole. Okay, to this side, over here, we have 1 over 4. So that means we have one piece out of 4 pieces. Now this 4 is really just a whole. It's what the whole number is. So it could be one pizza with 4 slices or cut into 4, and we're only talking about 1 out of the 4. Either we only have 1 out of the 4 or only 1 out of the 4 has pepperonis, but we're only referring to one part out of 4 parts to make the whole. And on this side we have 3 parts out of 4 parts. Okay, again, 3. The whole is the 4 parts. It could be, like I said, a pizza or a pie with 4 slices, or we're only talking about 3 of the slices. Or we could be saying 3 parts, 3 slices are missing, and on this side 1 is missing. Okay, so which number is bigger, 1 out of 4 or 3 out of 4? You probably already know the answer, but what makes it easier are these on the bottom right here. These are called strips, number strips. And what we can do with these number strips is that we can actually color what we have. So we have only 1, for example, on this side, we have 1 out of the 4, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's just color the 1, okay? And then on the other side, we have 3. 1, 2, 3. I didn't color them all the way in, but you understand what I'm doing. So which one is bigger? Okay, you can see over here that we have only 1, but over here we have 3. So which one is bigger? If you're saying this one over here, you are correct. Now we need to learn what sign we use to put in the middle where my face is right here. On this part, we put a sign to say which one's greater than and which one's less than. So we can say that 3/4, that's how we say this fraction right here. We say 3 out of 4, 3/4, is larger or bigger than 1 out of 4, 1/4. When it's out of 4, we call it quarters because there are 4 quarters in one whole, in $1. Right? A quarter is 1 out of 4. One of two signs that we can use is this one. Okay, now this sign right here, this one is called greater than. Greater than because the number we put on this side will be greater than the number that we put on this side. And how do we remember that? Well, the sign has 3 points. 1, 2, 3. Right? On this side, we have more points than on this side. So on the side that you have the more points, like 1, 2, it's the side with the bigger number. And on this side, we only have 1 point. So this side has the lesser number. Okay? So for example, I can say on here that 4 is greater than 3. This side, we put the greater number because these 2 points are greater than the one point. So we always put the greater side, the bigger side, to the bigger number. So 4 is greater than 3. When we flip the sign around, we say less than. So we say 1 out of 4, or 1/4, is less than 3/4. Remember, less than because this side is the lesser side is on this side. The 2 points are here, and the 1 point is in here. So this side has less than this side. So we put the smaller number, this one, to the lesser side, and the bigger number to the bigger side. For this next part, watch this video. Okay, it's about a 2.5 minute to 3 minute cartoon explaining what I just showed you. Watch it carefully, and then when the video is over, we'll do an exercise where we compare the sizes of different fractions and we put them in order from greatest to smallest, from the biggest number to the smallest number. Okay, so watch this video for 3 minutes.
Compare fractions and put them in order using fraction strips. Here's 3/4 and 1/4. And here's an illustration of those fractions using fraction strips. You can see straight away that 3/4 is the greatest fraction. Next, we write about that using the greater than or less than signs. We're going to show the fractions from least to greatest, and that's smallest first. Now the fractions are in the right order, but which sign do we use between them? Not sure which sign to use? Don't worry, here's the easiest way to put in the right sign. We can think of these signs as having 3 dots, 2 here and 1 here. 2 dots always go beside the greater number in the pair and 1 dot beside the smaller number. 2 is greater than 1, and here 1 is less than 2. We understand the sign from left to right, like reading a word on a page. Going back to our...
And this is what I was telling you about. I was talking about the fact that we put the bigger number on the side that has the most number of dots. This side has more dots than this side. This one's 2 dots compared to 1 dot. So we put the larger number here and we say this number is greater than this number. In this example, we say 2 is greater than 1. When we put the smaller number first, right, we only put the side with 1 dot rather than 2 dots. And we say 1 is less than 2. Remember that we have to connect these dots with the lines. Okay, so we connect them like that.
Back to our fraction pair, I put the 2 dots beside the greatest fraction and 1 dot beside the smallest fraction. Now, join the dots. 1/4 is less than 3/4. We used the less than sign without any confusion with this easy thinking. When fractions have the same denominator, we just line them up in size order using the numerators.
Okay, let's pause here and see what they mean by this. When fractions have the same denominator, a denominator is the number on the bottom. Okay, so let's say we've been working with 4. So let's say we have 3 out of 4, 3/4. Okay, and we have 2/4, and we have another one, right? The other one could be 1/4. Okay, all of these have the same denominator, the same bottom number. They're all out of 4. Here I have 3 out of 4, 2 out of 4, and 1 out of 4. Because they're all out of 4, it's really easy for us to see which one's greater and which one is less than. Just line them up in size order using the numerators. The numerator is the top number. Again, that denominator, this word right here, denominator, is the bottom number. And the top number is called the numerator, the one that we count. So which number is largest? 3. Which one is second largest? 2. And which one's the smallest? 1. So this is our smallest number. It's our second, and this is our largest. And we're able to just count the top ones because they're all out of the same number. They all have the same denominator.
Easy. We don't even need to use fraction strips. We'll have one last example, then it's your turn. We're going to put this group of 4 fractions in order from greatest to least.
So how do we do this? Well, because they have the same denominator, the bottom number, remember, denominator is the bottom number. Numerator, like numbers, are the top. The denominator is the number that it's out of. Notice that they're all out of 8. Well, which one's the smallest number out of 8? If you're saying 2 out of 8, you are correct. This is the smallest. And which one's the largest? Which one's the highest number out of 8? 7 out of 8 is the largest number. And if we wanted to write it from biggest to smallest, we would write 7 out of 8, right, is greater than, remember our two little dots, greater goes on the bigger side, and the smaller one goes on the side with a lesser value, and you connect them. Or you could just simply write it as a, without drawing the dots, you can simply write it as the line. So 7/8 is greater than, which one comes next? 5/8, right? Which is greater than 3/8, right here, right? Which is, that's bigger than 2/8, right here, our smallest one. Okay, so because here I have 7 pieces out of 8 pieces. Here I have 5 pieces out of 8 pieces, 3 pieces out of 8 pieces, and 2 pieces out of 8 pieces. This is our smallest number, so we put it in the smallest side. And this is what it should look like. Okay, so you put the fractions in order from greatest, biggest, to least. From greatest to least, or from biggest to smallest. 7 out of 8, 5 out of 8, 3 out of 8, 2 out of 8. And we say 7/8 is greater than 5/8, which is greater than 3/8, and 3/8 is greater than 2/8.
To put this group of 4 fractions in order from greatest to least, we start big and go small. This time I'm not going to use fraction strips. The denominators are all the same, so the numerator tells us the greatest fraction. And 7/8 is the greatest fraction because it has the largest numerator. The next one down from this is 5/8, then 3/8, and the smallest is 2/8. Now they are arranged in descending order. We have to use the sign that shows that relationship. Between the first 2 fractions, put 2 dots for the bigger fraction and 1 dot for the smaller fraction. Join the dots, and there's our sign. Greater than. 7/8 is greater than 5/8. And again, between 5/8 and 3/8, 2 dots by the greater fraction, 1 by the smaller fraction. 5/8 is greater than 3/8. And the last one, put in the dots, and there's our sign. So we have written 7/8 is greater than 5/8, which is greater than 3/8, which is greater than 2/8. You can do this too.
Okay, now for this part, I want to take this strip right here, and you can see that it's out of 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And let's just pretend that I have, out of 4, I have 1/4. Okay, 1 out of 4. That means that this whole one right here should be colored, right? 1 out of 4. Now let's just say that I also have another number, and it's out of 8. 8. And in my 8, I have 4 out of 8. Which number is bigger? Well, because we have a different denominator, it's not as easy to see. But if we were to color on here if we were to make this strip, instead of out of 4, we make it out of 8. So we cut it so that we have it out of 8. For example, I cut it like this. I cut the first one in 2 pieces. I cut the second one into 2 pieces. The third one into 2 pieces. And the last one into 2 pieces. Notice that that gives me 8. Because I took each one and I cut it into 2 pieces. The first one, I cut it into 2. The second piece, I cut it in another 2, another 2, another 2. Count by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8. And now let's say I color 2. I color 2 more. I color 4. So this gives me 3 and 4. Remember that before, all of this one right here was only 1. All of this was only 1, and we were saying that this was 1 out of 4. But because I cut it, now it's 2 out of 8. So 1 out of 4 is the same thing as 2 out of 8. Notice that 2 out of 8 because I've cut them all in half. Now that it's out of 8 and I cut all of 8, I needed to color 4. You can see that now I had to color more of them. Before I only had this color for 1 out of 4, but 4 out of 8 I had to color all the way to here. So you would write it as 1/4 is less than 4/8. Okay, what I'm trying to say with this is the following. When you have different denominators, okay, you can use a number strip like this one to compare. Let's try a different example. Here I have a whole strip, right? A whole strip. This is just one whole strip. I haven't decided what I'm going to cut it out of. But I know that over here is my 0. I have nothing there. And over here at this end, if I had it all full, it would be my 1, my whole. And right here is my half, right? It's my half. Now, I don't know, again, how many pieces I'm going to cut this into. I don't know what my denominator is going to be. But let's pretend that now I have a fraction, and my fraction is out of 6. So that means that this strip will be cut out into 6 pieces, right? What if I had the number 4 out of 6? Would you say this number is closer to 0? Is it closer to half? Or is it closer to a whole? Is it almost 6 out of 6? Is it almost 0 out of 6? Or is it almost 3 out of 6? Which number is this closest to? Well, it's 3 out of 6, and I ask you 3 out of 6, it's because if it was out of 6, 3 out of 6 would be right there, because 3 is halfway. It's half. It's half of 6. The skill I'm trying to show you is called landmarks. To find a landmark, okay, so that we are able to compare fractions. If I show you a fraction that says, for example, 3 out of 10, and I give you another fraction which says 1 out of 4, are you able to determine which one is bigger and which one is smaller? They're pretty close because they're both far away from being a whole. For this one to be a whole, all the way to here, it would have to be 10 out of 10. And for this one to be a whole, it would have to be 4 out of 4, right? But are they closer to the half? What's half of 4? 2. This would have to be a 2 to be right in the middle. And what's half of 10? 5. This would have to be a 5 to be right in the middle. Okay, you're probably thinking, well, this one's down 2 from half, so this one must be smaller. Well, no. We actually have to check to see how far they are. So what we can do is we could take this number strip and make 2 identical number strips. We break one into 4s, like so, and we color 1, right? And that would represent this one, 1 out of 4. And now let's make one to represent this one right here. But instead, we cut it up into 10 pieces. And we color 3 pieces, right? 1, 2, 3. Which one looks bigger? This one goes all the way to there, while this one goes all the way to there. A little bit more, actually. And a little bit more there. Clearly, you can see that the bottom one, okay, goes further. You can see it right there. So 3 out of 10 is larger. There's another way to figure that out, too. We can simply convert these into percent, but that'll be for a different lesson. So always ask yourself before you compare fractions, is it closer to the half? Here I have 3/8. Well, over here I have 7/10. Which one would be larger? Well, you have to ask yourself, is it closer to 0 or is it closer to a half? What's half of 8? What's half of 8? 4, right? So for it to be right there, 4/8 would be right in the middle. 3 is less than 4. So clearly 3 must be somewhere in here. 3/8. It's less. What's half of 10? What's half of 10? 5, right? So 5 tenths would be right in there, correct? 7 is larger. So you know that 7 must be somewhere in there. Okay? So if this is more than half and this is less than half, this number must be bigger. Okay, so we can just simply write it as 3/8 is less than 7/10. Okay, so now we can use these different skills to compare fractions. Let's try our worksheet, and let's try by using number strips or by using landmarks. Is the fraction closer to 0? Is it closer to half? Is it less than half or more than half? Or is it closer to a whole? Determine that with each fraction and then try to compare. Sometimes it's easy to do it, sometimes it's not. When it's not easy to do it and the denominators are different, use a number strip. If the denominators are the same, you can simply tell which number is larger or smaller by the numerator. Okay, that's all for today.